Hello, greetings from the Pacific Northwest. I'm Dave Christie, part of the national slate of LaRouche Democrats. I'd like to thank Diane for inviting me to speak, where I understand you'll be having some discussions around the nature and principles of the U.S. Constitution. Now, what I'd like to contribute to that is that really the founding of our Constitution is inextricably tied to the development of the U.S. credit policy, as outlined by Alexander Hamilton most explicitly. And now what we see, of course, is that the core of our preamble, with the General Welfare Clause, the posterity of thinking of the coming generations, and the idea of the sovereignty, that we see the same General Welfare Clause explicitly stated within Article 1, Section 8. And now, if you think of the fight around the foundation of the U.S. Republic, the Constitution and this credit policy, contrast that to what the British imperial policy was. Take the year 1770, approximately the time the Boston Massacre occurred, up until 1789, which is when George Washington becomes president, approximately a year after the ratification of the Constitution. If you take that time period and you look at the British East India Company policy in India, we see the deaths of 35 million people under a famine policy, right, which was, not different than what we see 100 some years later in Ireland, where as the Irish are dying out en masse, under the free trade policies of the British East India Company, food is being funneled out of Ireland. Now, this is what Alexander Hamilton saw as a young boy growing up in what's today the Virgin Islands. And really seeing this British East India Company complex with the sugar plantations, the slave trade, he himself economically not really all that different in terms of wealth than slaves, so sees the injustice of this system. And it's out of this injustice, but really towards with the assertion of what it is to actually be human, that we see the preamble of the Constitution, these core principles asserting itself in statecraft. Now, this brings us to today, where what do we see? The same policy, right, under so-called globalization, which really is no different than the British East India Company. In some cases, the same families running the show. We see global food shortages. We see under an Obama administration, which adheres to these free trade policies, a food crop being wiped out in the South due to these storms, which he says we can't even forecast, while he's taking down the satellites that forecast them. And we see the idea that we're not going to replant our crops. We're just going to let the market decide the fate of mankind. So at this moment, we stand with, as LaRouche has outlined, a month-long deadline here until about the time of the celebration of the American independence, July 4th. Up until this time, we have a full-on juggernaut that the LaRouche Democrats are creating to say we're crushing the British imperial policy forever. That means we're going to get Glass-Steagall in. We're going to reassert Hamilton's constitutional credit policy. We're going to rebuild the United States as Roosevelt did. We are going to put the relevant satellites into the sky for precursor evidence of what we face out here. As you can see behind me, a giant volcano, as of there are many ready to explode here in the Pacific Northwest. We have a mega thrust earthquake potential coming from the Cascadia subduction zone. We should be able to forecast these events, move people to safety, but as importantly, begin the process of rebuilding this nation. Do what Roosevelt did again, and launch an era of scientific development and a true economic recovery, as with projects such as NWAPA. And this is what the slate of LaRouche Democrats are leading around the nation, and it's this fundamental core principles that we have to assert in our nation again to ensure that As I'm sure everyone is familiar with the statement of Ben Franklin that we can have a republic if we can keep it by asserting these principles again. And that means this economic recovery beginning with Glass-Steagall. So we have 1 month left to do it, and we have to drive like hell to avoid going there. And that's what the slate of LaRouche Democrats are doing, and I encourage you to work with us through this month and beyond. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Kesha Rogers, LaRouche Democratic candidate here in Texas, and I'm one of the 6 LaRouche Democratic candidates, and I'd like to welcome you to Diane Sayers' town hall meeting. Diane asked me to give a few remarks regarding the subject matter of the nature of our Constitution as natural law. This is going to be very important to understand to get at the concept of the fight for Glass-Steagall and why Glass-Steagall is not just another bill in Congress to be fighting for, but is the true understanding of man's creative power and taking those principles embodied in our Declaration of Independence and our preamble and applying them to the crisis today, which is necessary for getting mankind the understanding of what it truly means to be a citizen in a republic. So I'll start with the reading of the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impelled them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. I would like to read the preamble to our U.S. Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. The mission and intention of our preamble and Declaration of Independence, just read here before you, is the return of the true intentions of a constitutional credit system which was defined by the first Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. This intention of a credit system away from a British monetary system allows us to understand the true nature and the significance of Glass-Steagall today. Glass-Steagall is not just a representation of a list of do's and don'ts in our Constitution, but it is a true embodiment of our constitutional principles of the credit system, which was defined by the Massachusetts Bay Colony and the starting and founding of our republic. Now, to understand this, look at what Glass-Steagall would represent away from this monetary system in the fight for developing and pursuing, once again, those inalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Under a monetary system, the pursuit of happiness means sense perception. It means pleasure, pain. It means allowing for Wall Street and the British Empire to continue to get trillions of dollars of bailouts at the expense of the taxpayers. Under a credit system, Glass-Steagall would allow for the development of the creative powers of the human mind. Glass-Steagall will allow us to increase the productive powers of the mind to develop the platforms of development necessary for solving the economic crisis before us. This means we can put into place NWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance. We can put millions of people back to work in productive jobs. This means we don't have to shut down our space program and our human space flight because of budget cuts to NASA. But Glass-Steagall will put forth the credit system which will allow us to continue our human space flights program, and not only this, to actually explore endeavors never explored before, including sending a man to Mars and bringing him back safely. Now, this is the principle of our credit system in which Glass-Steagall, and our Constitution in which Glass-Steagall represents. It will allow us to take on this destructive power of a monetary system that is embodied by people like Barack Obama, who is a traitor to our U.S. Constitution and the intentions embodied therein. Because this president was put in office to destroy that constitutional intention, to continue to push for the bailout policy of Wall Street against the interests of the American people. And with Obama out under the 25th Amendment and Glass-Steagall in, we can once again restore those true principles of our Constitution. And this means allowing for our population to understand that the fight before them now, the fight before each and every one of you watching this, is to understand that our republic was founded on the idea of by the people, for the people, and of the people. And we the people is the principle of our preamble. We the people are those who have to go out there and fight and make sure that Glass-Steagall is passed so that we can once again restore the creative powers of the human mind to once again develop this republic for what is going to be the posterity of our nation. So if we the people don't want to see our Constitution continue to be demolished, then we better get Glass-Steagall passed this month. And for a bit of inspiration, Glass-Steagall was enacted and signed on June 16, 1933. So this gives us a clear mission to fight forward for. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you on the front lines fighting for Glass-Steagall and put it in place by the end of this month. Have fun.